Welcome to Cake Style. Today I'm going to show you how to make a gorgeous rosette cake. We're going to be using some beautiful shades of pink, working from a lighter pink and going in an ombre effect down into a mid pink at the end. Now, when you're creating this cake, it is a simple cake and it is very fast to make, but it's important that you get each rosette looking flawless. So initially we're going to start working on a laminating sheet and I'm going to show you exactly how I make the perfect rosette, and then we're going to get onto the cake. Now, this cake that I'm using is an 8-inch round. It's just almost 4 inches high. We're going to be creating 3 layers of colour on it. So I've gone ahead and I've cut it, I've filled it, and I've done a fairly thick crumb coat this time. And the reason is that just in case in any of the gaps between the rosettes you might see a little bit of cake, we want to make sure it's a pink and not any of the crumbs that you'd normally see. So I've done the filling and the crumb coat in my lightest shade of pink. That way when you slice it open, you'll see all the beautiful pink inside as well as on the outside. That's optional. I'm going to break down for you exactly how much buttercream I've used in all 3 of the colours so that you can follow along, or you can always just go ahead and use the same colour on the entire cake. So let's get started with some piping and we'll get those rosettes happening. So what I'm going to do is just get a piping bag ready. I'm just using a disposable piping bag. You could use a fabric one or one out of parchment paper, it's up to you. And I'm using a 1M tip for this. So I'm going to slot that inside. Working with our darkest colour first. Now, when I fill up the piping bags, I don't like to fill them up too much because otherwise you'll find it difficult to hold. So about halfway is good, but just make sure every time you do a rosette that you absolutely have enough icing to finish that rosette off. You don't want to get halfway through and you start squeezing and you're having trouble, because it will mean that you won't get that rosette looking gorgeous. So just fold that back up. Now, I like to hold my piping bag by flattening it out a little bit, wrapping it around my index finger and back up through. Find a way that works for you. And what we're going to do is I create basically like a little E. So like a lowercase e is what I'm going for. I'm going to start in the middle, pull up and then wrap around. You can go clockwise or anti-clockwise. It depends on which hand you pipe with, and it's just a personal preference as well. Okay, so I'm going to start by squeezing. I'm not pressing into the surface too much, pulling up a little bit. Straight away I'm dragging up and around. Then when I get 3/4 of the way, I let my pressure go, but I keep moving in that direction, and that helps it to break off really well. So what you want to do is make sure that that center bit isn't squashed, and you want to make sure you wrap all the way around it and give it enough room. If you pull it too close, I'll show you here, if you're too close in or if you pull it around and you stay too tight, you'll find that it doesn't look as full and it doesn't give as good a shape. So you can see the difference right there. Pulling up, dragging it up and then wrapping all the way around. 3/4 of the way, stop your pressure, but keep that rotation going. So now we're ready to start working on the cake itself. Just applying enough pressure so that it will stay onto the cake. Pull up, going all the way around, let your pressure go, and then keep traveling up. And then all we're going to do is work our way around the entire cake at this height in this color. So give enough room between so that you can do a full rotation. You don't want to squash them. So again, attach, pull up, around, let your pressure go, and pull it up. Okay, so as we come around the cake, we just have to gauge how much room is left and decide if there's enough room for 1 or 2. So on this, I think I can squeeze in 2 if we just get a little bit closer to there. And final one around. Now, if you have any where they've touched the board and you want to touch it up, you can come along with a toothpick and just quickly clean that up on your board. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get ready to do our mid colour along the centre of the cake. Okay, so now we're on to our second colour. We also need to stagger where the rosettes are. So we're going to be going in between our existing layer. We're going to come up a little ways on the cake. Make sure that you've got enough room to still swoop below though. So we're going to squeeze, pull up and around, and then drag it up. Moving along to the next space, pull it up and along. So now we've only got 2 left to go. Just keep making sure that you're attaching it and giving each rosette enough room. Okay, so now that we've finished 2 of our layers, we're going to go ahead and do our final colour, which is our lightest colour. So we need a lot more of this, seeing as we have to do all the way around and the entire top of the cake. Now, every time you change colour, it's a good idea to change bags so that it's nice and clean and so that you don't have any cross-contamination of your shades. You want this to be really, really structured in its ombre. So we're going to fill this up and get going on the last of these. This is a really popular cake. It's great for birthdays. I'm making this one for my mum. You can even make them for small wedding get-togethers, anniversaries, things like that. It looks great in lots of different shades, but this is a personal request for pink, so that's what we're going with today. All right, so again, we want to stagger it in between our existing ones. Move this out of the way. Starting, we're going to apply our pressure, pull up and wrap around. Now you can see how I've gone just a little bit over the top, and that way when we do our first row in here we can butt it up and you're not going to risk seeing any crumbs or any edge of the cake. So that's why it's nice to have the cake be just under 4 inches high, and that way we can elevate it a little bit ourselves. So coming back through and wrap around. Once you start getting the hang of doing the rosettes, you can speed them up a little bit, but just remember, it is a super fast cake to do already, so it's worth taking the extra time to slowly do each rosette to get them perfect. All right, so now we're onto the top of the cake. So the hard bit is done, which is working on the sides. Now we get to work top down, so things get a lot easier. So now what we're going to do is do our outside layer first. So starting the same as we did before, give a little bit of space, squeeze, and wrap around. And then I like to work in the same direction, so I've been constantly working from left to right, so I'm going to do the same on here. Leaving enough room. So now when I do these, I like to space them out, starting the first one in between, but then don't worry about it after that, because you'll find that you'll do far less on the top than what you did on the sides. So as long as you keep them nice and close together like you have on the sides, it'll still look perfect. So we'll continue to add. Okay, now we're moving on to our second row. Again, moving in the same direction. Just keeping them nice and close together.